Okay, good morning. Once again, I'm Mike McLeod. I'm the Director of Operations for the BC Hotel Association. Very pleased to have several guests here from WorkSafeBC to discuss the landscape currently with the accommodation sector and our rates and those types of things. This session is being recorded. If there are any questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom. We'll monitor that as we go. But without further ado, I'd like to invite Allison Jones to kick us off here and get us started. So Allison, over to you.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. We do appreciate this opportunity to share some information with you. Just to start us off, I just want to share that I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, which includes the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. And I also recognize we've got folks joining us from across the province. So many of you are joining us today from other regions, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands as well. We have got a agenda for you today that includes an overview of our 2024 preliminary industry insurance rates. We're also going to review the time loss claims, so the injuries, what the picture's been looking like for this group over the last couple of years. And then we'll quickly talk about a few WorkSafeBC resources. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the session. We will address questions at the end, but please do feel free to type things in the chat as they occur to you. And then we'll just review the chat and make sure that we've covered everyone's questions at the end there. We've got a few different people, as Mike said, joining us from WorkSafe today. And I am just going to ask them to introduce themselves as it's their turn to share information with you. And with that, I will hand it over to Kieran to get us started.
Thank you, Allison. My name is Kieran Batty. I'm the manager for Classification and Rates Modification Program at WorkSafeBC. And then I will be walking you through your 2024 insurance rates. So before we dip into information specifically related to your industry, let us take a quick look at the global information that our CFO shared at this summer's town hall session to explain the overall insurance rate remaining at 1.55. This slide speaks to our investment returns. Though we did take a loss in 2022, our performance was better than any other jurisdiction. So our financial position remains very healthy and allows us to continue to offset insurance rates. Just to be completely clear, the figures referred to in the time loss claims rate and the return to work outcomes are those for system as a whole. That is all of the industries combined and not just for your industry rate group. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we are still referring to the average base rate for the whole system combined. The story told here is that the green line, which is the average base rate line, has been consistently below the blue average cost rate line since 2007. This indicates that favorable investment returns have discounted rates below the cost to the system since then. The red line at the bottom represents the administration cost, and those costs have remained flat for a while, as you can see, and it has been decreasing now over the last couple of years. So if an individual industry's insurance rate is increasing, this should assure you that this is not because of WorkSafeBC's administrative overheads. Next slide, please. So let's paint a picture of WorkSafeBC's insurance model. The starting point is a classification unit, shown here as a golden block at the bottom of this image. The firms place together with peers and competitors into those industry classification units. Most industries are not large enough to calculate insurance rates, so they're gathered into one of our 235 industry groups. Your industry, however, is large enough, so it has one of the independent rate groups shown here. Next slide, please. So for overnight and short-term accommodation, you represent 95% of the total payroll and of the total claim cost in rate group JB. Next slide, please. So this slide shows us the trends for your industry's cost rate versus charge rate. As you can see, your charge rate is trending lower than your cost rate. And that is because surplus money has permitted us to offset your cost rate and charge a lower rate. And the increase that we see from 2023 to 2024 is due to less surplus money available to offset the rates as we amortize surplus and or deficit over 5 years. So since we've been using your surplus to offset rates, therefore there's less of it left now to offset it further. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you the cost components for your rate group, as well as and on the right hand side for your classification unit. As you can see, the major difference is the amortization adjustment, which was minus 0.58 for 2023, but is minus 0.45 for 2024, leading to your base rate of 1.44. Next slide, please. So now, having spoken about your base rates, let's talk about experience rating. So firms whose claim costs are the same as those of the other firms in their industry are considered average, and they pay industry's base premium rate. However, if your firm is performing better in terms of safety and has lower claim costs as compared to the rest of your industry, then your firm can achieve up to a 50% discount. And if your firm is worse than the average, then your firm can achieve up to 100% surcharge on the base rate. So first we look at your claim costs for the past 3 years, then we consider the size of your firm in terms of payroll, and finally we compare your claim costs per dollar of payroll to average of your industry's rate group. Some other considerations are no fault. All claims are used unless explicitly excluded. Excluded claims are normally occupational diseases with long latency periods. COVID claims are also excluded, and for fatal costs, we use a 5-year rolling average when we calculate experience rating. Next slide, please. So this example shows you that a property with a payroll of about 500,000 with roughly average performance would pay industry base rate of about 1.5%, so $7,500. But that property could pay as little as $3,750 if they had a good experience rating outcome based on their performance, and they could end up paying up to $15,000 depending on their safety record over time. Now I will pass it on to Allison to talk about time loss claim statistics.
Great, thank you, Karen. And before we get into that, we were just going to share a little bit about what Tim and I do, and Tim will introduce himself in a second. But we are from Occupational Health and Safety Consultation and Education Services. And what we try to be is a conduit, a two-way conduit between the industry and WorkSafeBC. So we are out there as a main point of contact, sharing information with you, but we're also a group that is in contact with your associations and constantly we're learning about industry, so we can share that information with our colleagues throughout the organization as needed. So for everyone on this call, you can view us as a main point of contact for your industry. We also use that industry knowledge that we gain to help develop industry-specific resources at times. And actually, we'll talk about what some of those resources are as we get further into the presentation. And now I will hand it over to Tim to introduce himself and share some information about the recent claims and injury picture.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to share some details about your injury picture for the past several years. And sorry, just to back up a little bit, I'm an OHS consultant with WorkSafe in OSH Consultation Education Services, working with Allison, and I support the tourism and hospitality sector. And so now looking at your time loss claims rate for the past 10 years, we can see in the on the orange line there is your time loss claims rate. And so this was formerly known as your injury rate. And this is a way that we measure the frequency of time loss claims on an annual basis, and it allows us to factor in the size of employers as well. And so the time loss claims rate is the number of time loss claims per 100 person years. Another way to look at this is the number of claims for every 100 workers working per year in that classification unit. So you can see here that we had a fairly steady rate of claims from 2013 to 2019, with a dip in 2020, and that claims are starting to rise again in 2022 with a rate of 1.95, still slightly below the average. Here we can see the picture of your claim costs. And so claim costs are made up by healthcare costs to diagnose or treat injuries, short-term disability benefits, long-term disability benefits, and vocational rehabilitation costs. And so the blue portion of the bars here represent the costs for that year that are associated to a claim that might have occurred during a prior year and still has ongoing benefits or medical treatment. And so we can see that the high marks for your claim costs were 2013, 2014, 2019, and that costs have risen a bit for 2022 at 9.9 million in total. This here is a representation of work days lost. And so this slide closely matches the previous slide for your injury rate as well as the claim costs. And so here you can see the total numbers of work days lost in each year. We had highs in 2013, 2019, a big drop for 2021, and a slight increase in 2022. Now, let's take a closer look at what's been causing injuries in your industry over the 5-year period from 2018 to 2022. In the top group of bars, we can see that overexertion is the most frequent type of accident or incident. And overexertion injuries are caused through forceful exertion when performing manual work, lifting, pushing, pulling, bending, etc. When we combine overexertion injuries with repetitive use injuries, we make up a category which we call MSIs, or musculoskeletal injuries. The next most frequent source of injuries in your industry are what we call falls on same level. And so these could be called your classic slip, trips, and falls. Now, looking at the lower group of bars, we can see which accidents are the largest contributors to your claim costs. So overexertion and falls on same level once again make up the biggest proportion of your claim costs. Interesting to note, we see that acts of violence and force only make up about 2% of your total time loss claims. However, they account for 8% of your total claim costs. And so we can see that when these incidents do occur, they can cause serious injuries and lengthy time off of work. Looking at the pie charts here on the left, we can see a breakdown of the proportion of claims by body parts. Back injuries make up the largest proportion of claims by body part, followed by wrists, fingers, and hand, shoulders, and so on. On the right-hand side, we see the distribution by nature of injury. So overall, 59% of the time loss claims are considered strains. So these are soft tissue injuries, and back strains make up the largest proportion at 21%. In the other strains category, that would be a combination of all other strains, whether it's shoulder strains, knee strains, etc. Looking at the other categories, we see contusions or bruises make up about 10% of the time loss claims, followed by lacerations, fractures. This graph here shows us the percentage of claims by occupation. And so you can see that light duty cleaners make up by far the largest proportion of time loss claims at 55%. And so light duty cleaners would be a broad category that includes your room attendants and other cleaners. Looking down, we see that cooks make up about 3.5% of the time loss claims, followed by hotel front desk clerks and so on. So the following chart illustrates the average number of workdays lost for a claim and the change in average over the last 10 years. So from 2019, we are seeing an increase in claim duration. And so 67, 65, and 63 days off work, respectively, in each year is the average. So that equates to about 12 to 13 weeks off work for the average claim. And so this information is useful because duration can show us a measurement of the average severity or the seriousness of claims. It can also correlate with the effectiveness of return to work programs. Here we can see the percentage of workers that return to work after an injury within a period of 6 months or 26 weeks. We can see that workers in your sector are returning to work at a rate comparable to the average, with the exception of 2020, when the return to work rate dropped to 70% within 6 months. Okay, so that's it for your picture on time loss claims. I'm going to pass it back to Allison now, who's going to share some information with you on resources.
Thanks, Tim. And if we could go to the next slide. I have got an outline of all the sort of ever expanding resources for self-service that we have available online at WorkSafeBC.com through your employer account. And I expect many of you are familiar with these, but we are adding new ones all the time. And I'm not going to talk about each one in detail because we actually can offer a different session if the association was ever interested in putting it on that goes in to these in a little bit more detail. But just wanted to quickly say that these are there available for employers to use as self-service, and it includes being able to pay your premiums and reporting your payroll online, including lots of the health and safety and claims functions like submitting your reports of injury, as well as your employer incident injury report forms. There is one specific tool on our next slide that I did want to mention, just in case people weren't familiar with it, but it's the Employer Health and Safety Planning Toolkit. And this is also something available through your online account. And it's an interactive tool that gives you an overview of your company's health and safety performance. So it gives you at your fingertips access to your company's data to be able to see the injuries and claims that are driving your costs. It has various drill down features to help you then prioritize which areas that you might want to take action about. And shows you how improving your health and safety performance over time will impact your assessment rates. It does come with a caveat The forecasting features in the tool really are targeted at employers that have 5 or more claims per calendar year. But there's still some good information there about your info. It's sort of all in one place. If this if this sounds like it applies to you and it's not something you're using already, I would encourage you to have a look. There are videos on WorkSafeBC.com that give an overview of what's included in the toolkit and how it can be used. And you can find those by searching Employer Toolkit by just going to our website. But if you ever have any issues or questions about that, you can always reach out to us as well. So on the next slide, we've highlighted a few of the resources that we have. WorkSafeBC.com has many, many resources on all sorts of health and safety topics. The ones that are reflected here are just a small portions of the ones that might be of particular interest to your industry. Because as Tim mentioned, we're seeing lots of musculoskeletal injuries. So we've got a guide to musculoskeletal injury risk assessment, which is a fairly new resource. We've also have a few different types of ergonomic calculators available that have been recently updated as well. And we also have specific to this industry is the room attendance safety video series. So those are a series of short informative videos that can be incorporated into your ergonomics program that have also sort of one pagers associated with each video that provide information about preventing injuries from common activities that are performed by room attendants. We've also highlighted here the, again, fairly new resource for preventing slips, trips, and falls in the workplace. Please don't be put off by the warehousing picture on the cover of that resource. It is a has broad applicability, the tips and information in that guide. And if slips, trips, and falls are one of the things that are driving your injuries, there's lots of great information in that resource. We also highlighted wanted to highlight the return to work resources that are available, because that's becoming of increasing interest, I think, in a lot of industries. Is what more can employers do around return to work? How can they tweak and improve their programs to get people staying connected to their work, but also returning to work faster and but also in a safe way. So our colleagues in return to work consultation and education services have lots of great guides and templates and all sorts of things that you can use, and those are all available on WorkSafeBC.com. But also, if you're looking for some more direct support and help, we can see on the slide here, they've got some advice for who and when you should call for more support, but in particular wanted to draw your attention to the fact that they can actually arrange education for your managers, supervisors, and return to work coordinators if that was something that you were interested in hosting. And you can see there we've got the telephone number for how to get in touch with our colleagues on that team, and they great wealth of information and resources for return to work services. And the last thing I wanted to highlight was that we have a wealth of data that we share on WorkSafeBC.com. And the information there is something that if you're perhaps a smaller employer and you don't have the 5 injuries per year that are needed for the forecasting function in the employer health and safety planning toolkit, the industry data that's available on WorkSafeBC.com might help you think about how you can target your resources and set your health and safety priorities as well. because we do offer a few different reports where you can look at what's happening in the hotel sector by selecting it specifically in the reports that are available. And there's a few different categories of reports. They're just shown up on the slide there. But if you hit the little plus button over on the right hand side, another menu will open up, and there's a few different reports to select from. There's two in particular I was going to mention today because they're a little less well known, but in the industry data section, so if you were to hit that little plus sign online, you can get a report there that includes some year-to-date injury counts. So there is information there about 2023 already. So it gets updated periodically throughout the year. And of course, that just includes counts, so frequency of injuries, not yet the rates, because we don't have the payroll information yet to make those rates up. The other one is underneath it where it says industry risks, where it says prevention data for planning workplace health and safety in BC. That report includes information about our prevention officers and their activities that they have going on throughout the past couple of years, including information about 2023 as well. So it doesn't include any information about individual employers or anything like that, but you can still use that report to get a sense of what officers are looking at in a given industry. And I think that wraps us up and gets us ready for any questions that we can answer for you.
Thanks very much, Allison, Tim, and Kieran. That's fantastic. Just seeing if there's some questions here. The question about will we send the recording and slide deck of this meeting? Maybe you can answer the slide deck question, Allison.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share the slide deck. So we can send that to you, Mike, for distribution and upon request, or if there was a participant list, it can be sent to the whole list.
And the recording of this will also be available on our website in the next couple of days. So there's a question here. Sorry, I missed where you see the report from prevention officers. Can you say that again, please? That's from Kim.
Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunately, you can't see it on this slide, the specific report, but for the line that's right in the middle there that says industry risks, prevention data for planning workplace health and safety in BC. If you were to press the plus button on the right side, then there'd be a drop down and you'd be able to, there's just one report there that you'd be able to select, and that's the one that you want. And for getting access to all of those links that are shown on the slide there, it's WorkSafeBC.com, and it's best if you go to the About Us section and then click on Shared Data.
Perfect. Couple more minutes here for any additional questions. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom there. Not seeing any further questions at this time. Allison, Tim, Kieran, thank you so much for the presentation, for all the information. As mentioned, we will make the slide deck and the recording available here shortly, and appreciate everyone's time and attention, and hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much for hosting us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share the information with everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.